Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for attending the regularly scheduled of the Operations, Management, Budget, and Government Accountability Committee. My name is Councilman TJ Clark, the committee's co-chair and majority leader for City Council. And we are joined by Council President Rosado, who is also the co-chair, Councilman Gale, who is a committee member, Councilman Sanchez, Councilwoman Surgeon, our Corporation Council, and members from the Mayor's Administration. And we are broadcasting live from HPA-TV.org. So hello to all our viewing members from Comcast Xfinity and also Frontier. So if there are no objections, let's get started. We are going to follow the agenda as follows. Item number 2, which is Mayor Bronin with the company resolution authorizing the city to accept funding provided by an Urban Act grant and administered by the Connecticut Department of Energy, Environmental Protection, DEEP. This award of $1 million is for the planning, design, permitting, and construction of improvements at Cole Park and Poe Park, specifically playing fields and related facilities, which was item number 4 on the February 22nd agenda. And I would say that we are going to be in the hands of Director Looney or Frank De La Repa, our engineer, for a presentation.
Thank you, Councilman Michael. Again, for the record, Michael Looney, Director of Public Works for the City of Hartford. Frank De La Repa, our city engineer, and I are here tonight requesting that Council enable the city to accept an award of a Urban Act grant in the amount of $1 million for use in recreation improvements in both Pope and Colt Park. I'll let Frank talk to some of the specifics about it, but our Urban Act grants are available from the state, and in this case from the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection for designated municipalities that are identified as being economically distressed or urban centers within the state. And we were fortunate enough to apply for and receive the award of $1 million. And now we're just looking for formal permission from the council to accept the funds. Frank, do you want to go into a little bit of the details of about Colt and Pope?
Sure. Good evening, everyone. At Colt Park, as you know, we just completed some pretty big projects there, and there were a few more that we couldn't complete because we didn't have the funds. For instance, Roberto Clemente Field, it's a beautiful field. We just renovated it, but there was a need for shade structures over the bleachers on either side of the field. So first base side and third base side, there's bleachers, and we're going to be putting shade structures over the bleachers. Actually, I'm sorry, I don't believe there's any bleachers on the first base side, only the third base side. So there's going to be a shade structure because it gets pretty hot in the park in the summer. Also, at the north part of the park near Stonington Street, there's going to be a pavilion structure for families that want to gather and have lunch or a cookout. So they'll be out of the shade. So we're going to do some improvements to that northern area near Stonington. Some more trees, a walkway. So it's going to be quite nice. So that's the half of that $1 million goes to those 3 projects. Over in Pope Park, as you know, we just completed a Little League field, and then there's been a push for a T-ball field, a regulation-sized T-ball field. So, when we do these fields, we want to make sure we put in proper drainage and irrigation so these fields last for a very long time. So we're going to build a regulation T-ball field and some batting cages so the kids can warm up in the batting cages, and that'll cover the $1 million. Any questions? I can't hear. Anybody? Did you
Any que-
Mr.
Any
Chair,
questions?
John Gale, through you.
Councilman Gill.
Yeah, just quickly, Mr. Del Ripper, where in Pope Park, the batting cages and the T-ball, just out of curiosity, just wondering where physically in the park these things are going to be located.
Well, if you know where the Little League field is, which is just south of the pond, the T-ball field will be just east of the pond, and the batting cages will be closer towards the Little League field.
So east of the pond, that puts it sort of on Park Street?
Well, no, it kind of puts it
closest to Park Street, or
it puts it in the middle of the park. We have a little pavilion, so it'll be south of the pavilion.
okay. And the batting cages?
Those will be closer to the Little League field, which has already been constructed. So it's closer to the parking lot, if you will.
And does the park extend? This is sort of off topic, but while you're here, does the park extend over the embankment and all the way to the highway?
The park actually, a portion of Pope Park goes on the other side of Park Street, where that building was just sold to the developer. Is that what you're asking?
No, I'm specifically asking about the area where the highway goes over Park Street. You got the Parkville Market and Pope Park Highway on the west side, and on the east side, it's where the tents went up this winter. I think there's still a tent there. Is that all on Pope Park land where the homeless people were sort of camping out?
Councilman, it's on city property. I don't know if it's on park property. I'd have to check that.
All right, thank you.
I believe it does, Councilman Gale, through you, Mr. Chair.
You believe that's part of the park, that property?
I believe it goes all the way up to, right up to 84.
To the state, wherever the state right-of-way starts.
Yes, I believe that's correct. We'll double check.
Thank you.
Councilman LeBron.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. Quick question. So in regards to that spacing where the homeless population was setting up, I had sent an email to you, Director Looney, and I believe was stated that it is state property. Is that not the case anymore?
Well, through you, Mr. Chairman, it depends where that right-of-way line is exactly. At some point, there is and I'm actually looking at the photos of it right now, there's a point where it stops being parkland and it starts being part of the highway right-of-way. So I don't think the park goes right up against the highway structure itself, but right up against the right-of-way line. And there's like a gate there that's open at this photo that I'm looking at, which I think is where the homeless encampment was. And that's what we believe is within the right-of-way, within the state right-of-way, and not necessarily on city property.
All right. Through you, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Councilman.
Okay. Yeah. So, Mr. Della Ripa, in regards to the building, in regards to the Little League fields at Pope Park, I know we've been on a couple meetings, and thank you for that. Is there any foreshadowing or barriers involved with the historical committee? I've heard maybe some issues with fencing or the height of fencing regarding the historical preservation group. Is that correct?
Well, they have to get a P&Z permit and through the historic commission as well. And yes, they wanted the fence not to be 5 feet. They wanted it to be 4 feet, which is acceptable. 4 feet is acceptable. I think there was a concern of the actual location of the park, but I believe that's been addressed. I mean, the location of the field, and I believe that's been addressed as well.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Delaware.
Thank you, Councilman. Any other questions from?
Yeah, I just want to, yes, through you, Chair. Thank you. I just want to, from a few years ago, what I discovered is that Pope Park extends under the highway to Pope Park Highway, which is a road between Hamilton Street and Park Street. And there is an extension of Pope Park there where
Exactly.
there used to be a celebration for the independence of Dominican Republic. And I believe the city maintains that park as well.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, that's the councilman is correct. There's over on Pope Park Highway on the west side of 84, there is an additional piece of Pope Park, and yes, the city does maintain that. There's also obviously Pope Park North, or what we refer to as Baby Pope, on Russ Street, kind of on the northeast corner of where the roundabout is being constructed.
Right, and that will be in front of the Powder Roll Boxing Academy.
Yeah, just to follow that up, if I may, Mr. Chair.
Yes, you may.
And this is just a total footnote, but it has always intrigued me that the road that Councilman Sanchez just referenced is called Pope Park Highway number 4. Obviously begging the question of where is Pope Park Highway number 1, 2, and 3?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, we at DPW at this time are not aware of where number 1, number 2, or number 3 are located. We can do some research on that. I'm sure we have a map that shows them.
Sure, I think that we all would like to be enlightened about where those other highways are located.
Would the chair entertain a motion?
Absolutely, Chair will entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to send this back to council with a favorable recommendation.
Is there a second? Motion has been made by Councilman Gale and has been seconded by Councilwoman Surgeon to move this item along favorably for the next council meeting. Any discussions? Any discussions? Hearing none, let all that are in favor of this say aye.
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 Any opposals? Any abstentions? Hearing none, the ayes have it. This item has been moved to the council meeting for as a favorable recommendation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Madam President and members of council.
Thank you, Director Looney and Mr. De La Repa. Moving along, the next item is a resolution requesting the Port of Common Council create a task force to evaluate the prospects of implementing a UBI pilot program in the city of Hartford, which was item 14 on February 8th's council agenda.
And through you, Mr. Chair, this was a resolution that I put through David. My assistant is going to give a brief PowerPoint presentation. David, if you can share that presentation with the members of the public and just go through it, please. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. So can everyone on the call hear me okay? Yes? Okay. So in your council packages, I included the initial resolution as well as the presentation that I'm going to go through right now for the public. I just wanted to bring to the council's attention that recently NPR, along with some other national media outlets, did report on the results of the Stockton, California pilot program. So I'll touch on that a little bit as well. Let me go ahead and do my screen share here so we can bring it up. Okay, can everyone see that okay?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, let me just minimize this so we can go through it. Okay, so for everyone that's not aware, UBI stands for Universal Basic Income. This was a proposal put together by Council President Mally D. Rosado's office through coordination of her team. And so I'll be happy to answer any questions, but I do want to keep everyone in mind before I go into this, that the purpose of the resolution is just to form a task force to determine the viability of launching a pilot program. So even though I'll be touching on some of the benefits of the UBI program, ultimately where this program has been launched across the country, the makeup of those cities and states is obviously going to be very different, as are the needs of the various residents that live in those cities. So the task force is just going to be put together to understand what the needs of our city are and whether or not a program like this would be beneficial. So the first question I get a lot is, have UBI programs been used in the United States before? This is not a foreign concept. Universal basic income programs have actually existed across the world. Several countries have implemented pilot programs, and some have even built UBI programs into their current policies. What I put together for you all here are 3 examples of 3 different states putting together a UBI program. So the first was in 1982. And by the way, the state of Alaska still has this program in existence today. They structured theirs to be very different. So rather than receiving a monthly payment, their residents receive an annual payment. And those payments are funded through revenue from mineral royalties. And I can send the council information on how they've done it, but basically through the mineral royalties, they put all of those revenues into a separate account. And at this point, they're just paying residents out through the dividends that are generated through those deposits, which is really innovative. In 1996, the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians in North Carolina implemented a UBI program for tribe members. A study of that program found that payments lowered instances of behavioral and emotional disorders in children, as well as reduced substance abuse in adults. I will tell you all that based on the 25 white page report that was submitted from Stockton, California, we're seeing those results as well. Again, a decrease in emotional and behavioral disorders in children and a reduction in substance abuse in adults. In 2019, a pilot program was launched in Stockton, California with 125 residents who were living at or below the median income line. That, by the way, was determined through census tracts. And each resident was given a $500 unconditional monthly stipend, which they used for essential purchases, food, housing, that along those lines. This slide actually gives a little bit more of a breakdown on where the money went based on management, the monthly management of the program. So again, in February, 125 randomly selected Stockton families began receiving $500 per month. And by the way, just as a reference point, this is from 2019. So the Stockton pilot program has been in existence for about 2 years. Again, this was a no strings attached, so it was unconditional, and families were chosen at random that lived along the census tract below the median household income. The Stockton, California pilot program gave us some really great information, so I'll be happy to send out those results to council members so that you can take a look at them. Oftentimes when we look at programs like this, the first thing that folks may think is, well, where's that money going? And so I think that the Stockton program did a really good job of trying to capture that information. Overall, based on a 2-year period, less than 1% of the funds that were submitted went to purchases that, residents might not deem, necessary, such as tobacco. Was there a question? Okay. And then finally, there's been national coverage on the efficacy of the universal basic income programs. Mayors from across the country have joined together to advocate on behalf of launching these programs. And so what I did here is I captured one of the most recent tweets from Matt Hennessy from San Francisco and included some of the cities and states where mayors are currently on the record of not only supporting this type of program, but actually even launching it. And so right now we've got Indiana, North Carolina, and Louisiana being the most recent states who have committed to launching a UBI pilot program within select cities. And then obviously through the task force, this would be something that the council would have to determine who best should represent our city. But here are some recommendations. Obviously, we're going to need some participation from economists so that we can determine the long-term viability of these types of programs. And obviously, we're going to need some of those folks who have a strong financial background so that we can develop a plan for sustainability. The pilot is meant to provide us with some initial data, but what we would like to see is a more sustainable program that could benefit Hartford residents in the long term. So these are some of our initial recommendations. So I will be happy to answer any questions. Let me just stop sharing that council may have.
Thank you, David. Question, and you might have covered this. What is the financial component to this? Would this cost the city any money?
So the initial thought was we wouldn't be using taxpayers' funds to fund a program like this. It doesn't make a lot of sense to ask folks in Hartford who may already be struggling because of the pandemic to then utilize those taxes to pay for other residents. And so we initially thought of bringing together the task force to identify possible revenue streams that we might tap in order to fund a program like this. There are two ways that we could unfold this. Initially, we would need enough of a group, a sample group, to get together enough data to then, apply for grants or to possibly reach out to sponsors. So the initial thought was we would select 50 single mothers and fathers and essentially provide them with a $500 check over 6 months. A program at 50 residents would cost approximately $150,000. That does not include any management of that program. So we, as the task force, would be then charged with determining how best to manage a program like that. And then we thought, well, if that's a little bit too big of a lift, we could potentially scale it down to 25 residents, again, single mothers or fathers. And that program over a 6-month period with $500 checks going out would cost approximately $75,000.
So how would these Hartford residents be chosen? Is there an application process? Or what are some of the best practices that we can learn from that some of the other cities have implemented this kind of a program?
Absolutely. In preparation for this effort, I've actually begun to put together an application so that residents who may be interested in participating in Hartford's pilot program can submit an application to us, and then we would determine, based on criteria that's developed by the task force, which residents will ultimately be selected. But some of that work has already begun.
Okay. I believe I saw Councilwoman Bermudez had a question.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for the presentation, David. This was really great. My question is kind of following up on what Councilman Clark mentioned earlier in terms of the rollout. Where would the money come from? And seeing in your presentation how you said that one of it was in Alaska, right? They got it from mineral royalties.
Yes.
So given that Council President sat in on was a member of the governor's equity task force for cannabis legalization in Connecticut, I'm wondering if this was something that she brought forth as a potential community benefits program.
So we have been developing this for a long time. And in putting together a task force, we understood early on that we would need to come up with a way to fund the initial pilot, but then also to create some type of sustainability plan to fund it in the more long term. Because really we know, based on programs that have already been launched, that a lot of the success of these programs is from the long term. So I think that what we decided was we don't know whether or not the revenue from the cannabis was going to be generated in 2022, 2023. We recognize through our participation that obviously that could be a possibility, but we were ultimately going to leave that type of discussion to the task force itself. We of course have recommendations and we have possible solutions, but by bringing together experts, we were hoping that they might be able to dissect the data from these other pilot programs to ultimately come up with something that would best meet the needs of our city.
You're right. In terms of, we don't know what's going to stick with that legislation, but I'm just curious if that was something that was brought forth as a request.
Not to the larger cannabis group, no. We did talk a lot about community investment and what that could potentially look like. But to say that we discussed a universal basic income program for cities like Hartford or Bridgeport, that didn't happen.
Okay, is it something that has come up in conversations? For instance, there's two bills that I'm looking at that are part of Recovery for All at the state level. House Bill 6187, Senate Bill 821, if I'm not mistaken. And so is this something that has been a conversation at the state level in terms of requesting UBI to be incorporated in those two bills?
Not with decision makers at the state, no.
Okay, so then in California, if, you said that they've had this pilot now for 2 years, and here we're looking at not tapping into our municipal budget, but rather getting philanthropy to step in or private donors, et cetera. So what potential partnerships are we looking at? Anyone that has been reached out to, or is this just like preliminary conversations to try to get things started?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. A lot of what's taken place prior to this discussion tonight have been very preliminary conversations. Well, once we get the task force together, what avenues can we tackle to provide initial funding? Again, $75,000 in the grand scheme of things is not a big lift to provide additional support for families who are already struggling, single moms, single fathers. And so I do think that there is a desire from organizations here in Hartford to support something like this, but we need to be able to provide a full proposal on what we expect, what some of the results from other programs have been, and what type of sustainability plan we can create from the initial data that's collected through the pilot.
Okay, thank you.
Text it back.
Councilwoman Surgeon.
Thank you, David, for a great presentation. A couple questions, both for Alaska and for the other, for the Indians. Those were actual sustainable, basically, from their revenue and their resources there. In Stockton, I believe, basically, it was private charitable donation. Did the program start in Stockton by having the money first, or did they develop the program, then went out and looked for funding?
So what I can tell you is the Alaska program was unique. Initially, they used the funds that were generated from the mineral right up front. So that's how they funded it. But as they were accumulating more revenue, they put that into a type of savings account, and they were able to essentially pay residents from the dividends. And so they're continuously growing that revenue. So that's why that program is so sustainable. In North Carolina, you're right, they utilized their casino funds essentially to help fund their program. In Stockton, the mayor of Stockton actually created his own nonprofit, which then went out and applied for funding to support the initial pilot. And so to say that, we have a solid plan on how to fund a pilot program, we're not there. What we're hoping is that through creating this task force, we can bring together enough folks who can contribute so that we can present a report to council to show that a program like this is viable, and here's how we're going to pay for it.
Okay, so have you reached out to to Stockton to actually take a look at what their proposal was when it was written by the mayor? And most of the program is driven by the mayors of these towns or cities. How is that different that is being driven by council? And does the mayor have buy-in on this?
I mean, I would say that everyone who wants to see Hartford be successful has buy-in on this. And I think that the mayor will be an incredible partner for launching a pilot program to help benefit Hartford residents. But to say that we've had a concrete conversation with him, we're just not there yet. The task force is meant to, again, put together that initial proposal so that we can report to council on whether something like this is even feasible. If we as a task force are not able to secure the $75,000 or the $150,000 to fund a pilot program with 25,000 or with 25 residents and 50 residents respectively, then really there's nowhere else that we could go with this unless we were to start reaching out to nonprofit or to for-profit or public partners to start securing funds now.
So have you taken a look at Stockton's proposal when it was just started, the mayor's write-up on the program?
I did. So the mayor obviously he's no longer there. So he did not win re-election. But I did send a request out to the new mayor's office to get some initial information. The 25-page white paper that shows all of the results, we just became aware of that. So I'll send that out to council members so you all can take a look.
No, I did read it. I'd forwarded to, when I read the article, I did forward it to the council president. So I did read the percentage of how the monies were spent. And it was really very satisfying to realize that only 1% was spent on either, cigarette or, so I mean, actually the funds were actually used appropriately, and it did decrease the mental, mental was what I'm kind of finding. And basically people were, didn't have to worry about $500. It was a great program in Stockton. So no, I commend you guys to keep going, and I'm looking forward to see what the task force come up with.
Thank you.
I have another question. In particularly Stockton, how much was that led by the county? Because a lot of governance in California is county-led versus municipally led. So what actually was funded out of the county and led by the county versus that local municipality? And how much of this was driven by the chief elected official versus the local legislative body?
My understanding, based on the research that I've done, is that this was driven almost solely by the chief elected official. But to say that there was no participation from county officials, I wouldn't be able to make that statement because I just don't know. And part of the task force will be to dissect the programs out of North Carolina. And currently, like I said, Indiana and Louisiana are in the process of forming their own pilot programs. And so part of the work of the task force will be to reach out to those municipalities as well, to figure out what cities are doing, what we've learned from other UBI programs, and implementing something that can be more specific to the needs of Hartford.
So I'm more really interested in the qualification piece as to the applications that were established and disseminated to those individuals in those cities and states. Really, how did was there any type of rubric that was used or metrics to weed out the applications and make a final determination as to these individuals qualified to be in this particular program?
Yeah, that's a great question. So in Alaska, all residents receive a payment. As long, I believe the age is 18, but it could actually be 16. I'd have to take a look. But all residents receive it. In Stockton, they randomly selected 125 residents, and there was 100% unconditional. So they placed no conditions on those applicants whatsoever. We wanted to have a more targeted approach. And so again, when we create the task force, we will come to the table with our recommendations. And it'll be up to the task force to determine, what best way to create this application process. How are we going to manage those who are participating? How are we going to support those who are participating? How are we going to implement a data collection process? All of that is going to be really important, because if we're thinking about the long-term sustainability of something like this, we want to make sure that we have the facts to back it up.
So you touched on a keyword that you just used. It was long-term sustainability. So I'm very interested in hearing, if you have this information readily available, how sustainable has these pilot programs been in California and Alaska? Are they still up and running? Have they scaled down? Do you have any information regarding that?
I do. So the Alaska program is still up and kicking. They still are giving out their annual payments. In California, that program has also continued, but it was always meant to be a 2-year pilot. And so they just concluded their 2nd year. I don't know whether or not it's going to be something that they continue with. I'm hoping that as we gather more information, we're able to figure out whether or not they're going to keep it going.
And with California, correct me if I'm inaccurate in what I'm about to say, they used nonprofit dollars, so nothing that was funded out of the city of Stockton, California's general fund budget to fund this program, correct?
Yes, that is correct. And that's essentially our goal as well. Again, we really understand that, as a community, it would not be fair of us to ask Hartford residents through their taxes to pay for a program like this. So we really will be seeking partners to fund our efforts in creating a UBI program, not only the pilot itself, but also, a longer term program.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from my colleagues? Councilman Gale.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple of comments. Maybe there's a question in there. We'll see. The Alaska, I could be wrong about this, but the Alaska program, if I'm not mistaken, is funded by the pipeline. When oil was discovered in Alaska and this pipeline was built to ship all that oil down to us, they started then. With this program, I mean, bully for them, but they've got a built-in revenue source that's pretty intense. And although with ultimately oil is probably on its way out, but that's 100 years from now. Who knows? With respect to, mind you, I applaud this. I mean, I think this is a great idea. But just to give some perspective on the math. I quickly Googled Hartford to find out what our median income is in Hartford. Median meaning that half our population makes less than this amount and half makes more. So Stockton was using $45,000. Our median income in Hartford is $22,500, meaning fully 1/2 of the people in Hartford are making less than $22,500. So we've got a very large population of people who are struggling. And if you were to try, and again, this is some back of the envelope math. If you were to try to give every one of these people $500 a month, every month, you're talking hundreds of millions of dollars. So my point in saying that is that ultimately, these are proposals that need to be adopted at the federal level. And ultimately, if Hartford can help the federal government realize the efficacy of a program, the importance of a program, the fact that the program has achievable results, which I think is what kind of where Stockton's going and what this program could do by demonstrating it in a different part of the country. I mean, I think it might be important from the federal government standpoint to have these little pilot programs in multiple places around the country to start gathering data. And I think the federal government, quite frankly, is sort of headed in this direction. The most recent stimulus, $1.9 trillion stimulus coming out of the Biden administration that was just adopted, if I'm not mistaken, now includes a basic income component for people with children. That is essentially sort of a guaranteed income for people. Now that's targeted for people with children, but there's a big dollar amount associated with that. And I think this is exactly the kind of thing that could help our federal government decide that, what we're doing for children potentially could be increased to just everyone at a certain level. I want to say I support the pilot program. I hope we can find the money to fund it. I think the data will be invaluable. But I don't want any of us to be unrealistic about it. This is just that, a pilot program designed to come up with some data. I don't think it could lead in the near future to Hartford or Connecticut adopting a program like this for our entire city population in need. So I didn't end up finding a question in all of that. So thank you, David.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Sanchez.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Chair. So I've been listening and, great questions. And Dave, great job, with the presentation and your answers. I think we need to really focus to what this resolution is to create a task force. It's not to actually start a pilot program, is a task force to do the necessary research so that we could determine if this program is feasible or not within the city. And to what Councilman Gale shared with us with the medium income, which I truly appreciate, that's below poverty line, if I'm not mistaken. So it's extremely important that we do support a resolution like this so that we can create a task force, so that task force can look into what's available, what resources are out there, and results from all these other states and possibly states that hasn't been mentioned at the moment. So if I were a member, I definitely would support this resolution. I think it's necessary. I believe that this is something that will be a great asset to the city of Hartford for our residents, especially when it's, today's time with the COVID situation and how, most of our residents, majority of the residents has been suffering and, with the loss of jobs, employment, or what have you. So I would hope that council would support this resolution and send it to council favorably. Unfortunately, I'm not a member again, but I would support it if I was. Thank you.
All right, any questions? Councilwoman Surgeon.
Mr. Chair, I would just like to put a motion on the floor to send this resolution to council, back to council favorably, in forming a task force to look at the possibility of doing the UBI program in the city of Hartford.
Second.
It's been properly motioned by Councilwoman Surgeon, seconded by Councilman Gale to send this back to council with a favorable recommendation, creating a task force to examine this further. Are there any other questions or debate?
I just have a comment through you, Chair. David, thank you for that excellent presentation and for answering all the questions. I had to step out for a minute, but thank you so much for all of your hard work, and to my council colleagues for supporting this. Thank you.
Thank you, Council President. Any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor of this item signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposals, any abstentions? Seeing none, hearing none, the ayes have it. This item has been moved to the next City Council meeting as a favorable recommendation.
Thank you all for the opportunity to present.
Thank you, David. All right, next, moving along, next item, we have a resolution requesting that Max State Square LLC and FBE State Square LLC provide a report on or before March 1st, 2021, consistent with its obligations under the tax relief, which was item number 19 on February 8th, 2021 council agenda. All right. I don't see anybody from the administration. Councilman Gale, you're the author of the resolution.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. This came up before this committee last month, and we continued it because there was nobody here at that time to speak to it. And I guess I'm a little surprised that there's nobody here tonight to speak to it. If I'm not mistaken, State House Square is getting a fairly good-sized tax credit of $150,000 a year, in return for which they are managing the plaza out in front of their building, all the brickwork that extends from Main Street to Market Street that used to be State Street, and the Aisle of Safety and all, that whole big plaza, I believe, is all now managed by State House Square. I think they clear the snow, they might provide the insurance, and they do some programming. And we at council approved a 10-year extension of that contract, providing them with $150,000 a year of tax benefits, if I'm not mistaken. And we simply ask that they show up once a year and tell us what they're doing to make downtown a little bit more lively. Understanding that this is COVID times and maybe there's not much of anything you can do, you would think that you could at least perhaps send a representative here. I guess my thought might be for tonight then to ask for another. I would ask that we just continue it, and I will personally reach back out to administration as well as to State House Square to see if they're planning to respond. There's a point at which you could say, well, all right, fine, you don't want to respond, we're taking your $150,000 away. Maybe we can't do that, but that's what the resolution says. The resolution says, this is essentially a contract. A contract involves both parties providing some consideration. We agreed to do something for State House Square. They, in fact, indeed to do something for us. If they're breaching the contract, it seems to me, then we could potentially take some further action. But I don't see us really wanting to go down that road. I would just think that we should be given the courtesy of coming in and explaining what's going on. So anyway, that would be my thought. Unless one of my other colleagues has some other thought, I would just I think I would ask that it be postponed. But
Councilman Sanchez.
Yes, thank you through you, Chair. I agree. For the last 5 years that I've been on, we've been giving out so many abatements, and with a small ask that council is given a report of what is outstanding, what has been done, what has been completed as far as maintenance, upgrades, and so forth, with whatever the agreement may be. And I find it completely disrespectful that we have to reach out to these folks when we work with them and ask them to come and give us a report. And today, there's no one here to represent. I believe that everyone that we've been given that tax abatement should have either someone that works with council or with development services or what have you, and reach out to us. We shouldn't have to be chasing after these folks. They reached out for us for some help. We gave them that help, and we're just simply asking that they come and give us an evaluation, a summary, or a report of what has happened since the signing of that agreement. So I completely support you on that. I would like for them to come to council and give us a summary. Thank you.
Council President?
Yes, I'm going to be redundant on this, but I support Councilman Gale on this. I agree with everything that Councilman Sanchez said. I believe this, I know that it's very disrespectful for them not to come in front of us. So Councilman Gale, I will support you in any type of action that you want to take. For the record, I'd like to ask, when was the last time that they were reached out to. Just to be fair.
Who's they?
I'm one that can tell you I have not spoken to them, but yeah, to understand a little bit clearer, who is they?
The if you can fill me in, the State House Square representative that should have come in front of council.
So I think that, let's say, since this resolution was placed in committee, some conversation should have been had with Development Services, since Development Services actually monitors these type of agreements. I don't know if anybody from this body has reached out to Development Services to have a conversation regarding this particular resolution to see if they actually can get in contact with the operators of State House Square, or if Development Services has this information themselves that could have been provided to us. So I think those are the questions that need to be asked, especially if I'm not sure if the authors of the resolution themselves have reached out. Seeming, I don't want to make any assumptions, but
Right.
That's probably where the gap in communication lies.
Because I think this is the second time we would be postponing them to come in front of us. Is that correct, Councilman Gale?
Yes, that's my recollection. This was on the last OMBGA agenda, and we postponed it at that time. And to your co-chair's comment, Councilman Clark's comment, I certainly can say that I did not reach out to them. I mean, I think to his other comment, I kind of assume that administration does this. I don't think we at council typically, go and reach out directly on matters like this. But as I said, I mean, at this point, I will certainly reach out to Development Services to find out what's going on here subsequent to this meeting.
Right, because it would be unfair to make the statement that it's disrespectful that they are not here in front of us without them knowing, right?
Yeah.
I think it might be a natural assumption that the administration was planning on doing that outreach to Development Services, to the operators of State House Square, because of this item being in the OMBGA committee. So lesson learned, and I think that the outreach will be done so that there can be a more proper reporting provided to this body next month for our meeting, or they could send information prior to us reconvening next month so that we can actually have a more dialogue about what the contents of the resolution is.
Okay, so I'd like to make a motion to postpone this item in committee until we have further dialogue with Development Services to reach out to State House Square.
Motion has been made by Council President and been seconded by Councilwoman Bermudez to postpone this item to our next OMBGA committee meeting. Say that 10 times fast. Any debate, any questions regarding the motion? Hearing none, seeing.
I have just a statement.
Yes.
I would be very curious if we were to pull that contract and pull back the $150,000, I believe, the abatement. And if it comes out in the Hartford Business Journal, they will have responded then. Just saying.
Duly noted. Any other questions? Seeing none, hearing none, all in favor on postponing this item, signify by saying aye.
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 Any abstentions, any objections? Hearing none, seeing none, the ayes have it. This item is postponed until our next committee meeting. All right, moving on. Next item we have on our agenda is a resolution to reappoint Ted C. as council's appointee to the Internal Audit Commission, which was introduced by Councilman LeBron, and we are joined by Mr. Ted C. And so since Councilman LeBron is the author of this resolution, Councilman, I'll leave it to your hands to introduce Ted C.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for this opportunity, and OMBG members for allowing us to bring this resolution before the committee. First of all, I just want to introduce Mr. Ted C., who is a longtime friend, but more of a family member. Mr. C., throughout my lifetime, has been someone that has dedicated his life to the city of Hartford, both as a professional and as a volunteer, and also as a dad. You know, he raised 3 sons in Hartford who are sons of Hartford, and went through the educational system here. He, you know, like a lot of other people, have decided to stay in Hartford and commit his life to Hartford, and as in a professional capacity, has obtained the highest level of acumen in terms of the financial world. And so Mr. C is someone that I hold in very high esteem, and someone that I respect, and someone who I know is passionate about the city of Hartford, is going to give his 100% to the city, and I believe will continue to do a great job in representing the folks of Hartford. So with that being said, Mr. C, I could give you more accolades if you want, but you know, there's only so much time. So the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Councilman LeBron. Chairman Clark and Council President Rosado and members of the council, thank you very much for the opportunity to address you and to explain why I would like to continue on the Internal Audit Commission for another term. I've been privileged to serve on the commission. The City Council originally appointed me to fill a vacancy back in 2013, and then reappointed me for a full term in 2016. And I currently serve as its chair. As you know, the commission plays an important role both in looking for efficiencies in the way the city services are provided, as well as promoting best practices in financial activities. And I believe that my experience as a municipal finance lawyer is well suited to the commission's mission and fulfills the charter requirement that members of the commission have, quote, professional experience in the fields of accounting, management, or financial analysis. I retired in 2011 from the law firm of Dave Pickney, formerly Dave Berry and Howard. And most of my legal career focused on municipal and state finance, primarily as bond counsel to the state of Connecticut, to various state agencies, and to many municipalities. And as such, I became very familiar with the management of state and local governments, the accounting used by state and local governments, and the financial analysis of state and local governments. And in particular, as the state of Connecticut's disclosure counsel and lead bond counsel for 20 years, I led a team of lawyers who continually examined the state's finances and provision of services in order to write the official statements that were used to sell the state's bonds. This constant examination of finances and provision of governmental services is just what the Internal Audit Commission does. And when I retired, I looked for ways that I could serve the city, and I believe my talents and past experience have proved to be a good match with the commission. While members of the commission do not have to be Hartford residents, I am a Hartford resident and have been so since I moved to Hartford in 1971. I believe that David Grant has circulated my resume, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Mr. C. Are there any questions from my council colleagues?
I just want to make a question, a comment, Mr. C. Thank you for your dedication and your passion towards the city of Hartford. It is so very nice. This is the first time that I get to speak with you, and I've heard very highly of you from Councilman LeBron. So I just wanted to tell you thank you for your dedication and your passion towards the city of Hartford and serving on our audit commission.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Council President. Councilman Sanchez, and then after Councilman Sanchez is done, Councilman Gale.
Yes, Mr. C, I just want to also piggyback off that. Thank you for your service, your time, and your dedication. I know it's a lot of work, and your profession is much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilman.
Councilman Gale.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have any particular question for Mr. C, but I want to echo much of what Councilman LeBron has said and add my own comments, my own experience. I've known Ted C. We've known each other for probably going on 35 years at this point. Our children all went to school together. So I probably first met Ted as a parent when our kids were in kindergarten or first grade or somewhere along the line. I know we cross. So we started our relationship as equal parents, and then come to find out that he's also a colleague. We're both lawyers. Very, very different practices, but Ted has achieved quite a bit in his field and has received considerable accolades over I think he understates for you his resume. This is an extremely, extremely talented individual. And I'm extremely proud. I was part of the council that reappointed him back in 2016, and I was proud to do that then, and I'm proud to support Ted now. And and we say this to everybody who comes forward. We're so appreciative as council members of public being willing to donate or dedicate their time to these commissions that pay nothing. In this case, one of the true benefits here is not only do we get his time for nothing, but he's retired, so he's got more time to give us. And this is the kind of guy who puts the time in. And I think we all know and appreciate that internal audit is a fairly sophisticated business. You read those audit reports, you're really getting under the hood with what is going on in these individual departments. And if you don't have the skill set to be able to pick some of these things apart, you're going to miss a lot of the important details that when corrected save the city money, make us more efficient, make us a better city, make us more responsive to our residents, all of that. I think that Ted has been a huge asset in that regard. So thank you, Ted, for being willing to re-up, and certainly you have my support in this.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Councilman. Any questions or comments from any of my colleagues? Councilwoman Surgeon.
Hi, Mr. C. Thank you so very much for your dedication and your time. I just had one question for you.
Sure.
What was the hardest thing for you over the number of years you've been in the Audit Commission? What was the most difficult decisions you had to have made? I'm just curious.
No, that is a hard question, actually, Councilwoman. The work that the internal audit unit has done has generally been exceptional. And I don't think we have had one difficult decision that stands out. I think that the work that the unit has done has been good. If there was Anything that was difficulty, it was a one personnel issue, which I do not want to go into detail.
Okay. All right, that's fair enough. But all right, then, a simpler question. What would you offer as a learning, what have you learned the most in working on the Audit Commission?
I think I've learned how dedicated the people and the people working for the city of Hartford are. And it's impressed me very much. And also how hard they work, even though they don't always have all the resources that if we could afford it, we should give them.
Right. Okay, that's important to know. I want to thank you very much. I always thank everyone who volunteers and work with us, in making our city better. So thank you very much for your long-standing involvement in our community, and I hope it will continue to be so.
Thank you very much, Council.
Mr. C, I echo the sentiments of my council colleagues about our admiration and thanks and gratitude for you being willing to give up your time, your retired time, which you could be spending far more better time than spending your time getting paid to do nothing but help out our residents in the place of the city of Hartford. So one of the questions I have is, from a budgetary standpoint, for the internal audit department, do you think that the department stands to have an increase of funding to support the causes of the city?
I don't expect that we need an increase for this next year. If that's what you're asking, Councilman. Whatever, I believe that the budget that has been put in by the already reflects on the only increase that would be whatever labor costs are required to be included. But it's generally mostly been a flat budget every year that I've been on the commission.
Yeah, I would say that's about accurate, but just wanted to see, from your perspective as serving on the commission for multiple years, if there was something that from the budgetary standpoint that we as council could do to support the department.
I think you've provided adequate support over the years, and it's been appreciated.
Thank you so much, and thank you for your work. Councilwoman Bermudez?
I want to say thank you as well. I agree with all the other councilors. We always say thank you to all those folks in the community who step up and serve and are part of boards and commissions. And we respect you and we honor your time, and we're very grateful.
Thank you, Council.
Councilman Sanchez, you had your hand raised.
Yes, I'd like to add a question. What was the most challenging audit that you experienced?
Some of the most challenging were probably the ones involving the misuse of unfortunately, the misuse of medical benefits. Challenging because it's something, when somebody needs medical benefits, you would want to make sure that they get them, and yet they need to follow what is right and wrong in terms of whether they're entitled to them. And when you have to cut somebody off, or you say to somebody, look, you've got to return that money because it wasn't appropriately yours, that gets at your heart.
I can imagine. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I can imagine that was a very, I would say, very difficult and challenging process for you all to go through and to do what was done. It could be heart-wrenching, but you all did a phenomenal job.
Thank you,
Council President.
Yes, so for the record, I was the maker of sending the appointment of Leticia Marulandola to to this committee. And I would like to postpone Mr. Seek's appointment until we are able to interview Ms. Morolanda, which could not attend the meeting today. But again, I want to express my sentiments of how dedicated Mr. C is to the city of Hartford in donating his time to the Audit Commission. So that would be my motion to postpone his resolution until we have the opportunity to interview Ms. Morolanda.
Second.
Motion has been made and properly second to postpone this resolution. Any other discussion? Any other discussion? Hear none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposals? Any abstentions? Hearing none, seeing none. The ayes have it. This item is postponed to our next committee meeting.
I just want to say thank you all for letting me appear before you, and it's good to see all your faces.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good evening.
Good evening.
All right. Thank you. So the item was postponed. Our next item is resolution to appoint Leticia Marolando to the Internal Audit Commission as council's designated appointee.
Yes, through you, Chair, I'd like to make a motion to postpone the item. There was quite a confusion with Ms. Marolando's appointment, 60-day appointment, and so she could not be with us today. So I'd like to make a motion to postpone this in committee until our next OMBGA meeting.
Second.
It's been properly motioned and seconded to postpone this item until our next OMBGA meeting. Any discussion? Any discussion? Hearing none, seeing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposals? Any abstentions? Motion has been made by Council President and seconded by Councilwoman Surgeon to postpone this item. This item is postponed to our next OMBGA meeting. Is there any other business of the committee? Any other business of the committee? Hearing none, seeing none. The chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Been properly motioned by Council President and seconded by Councilwoman Surgeon to adjourn this meeting. Any discussion? Hearing none, seeing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I just like to make a comment. Thank you so much, our Corporation Counsel Rifkin, for being here with us, and to Hartford Public Television for always supporting us. Thank you so much.
Okay.
This meeting is adjourned. Have a good night,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Good night.
Good night. Bye-bye.
Be the best version of me I can be.
Connect with others.
Know my limit.
Be kind to myself.
Feel good about feeling good.
Mental health is a normal part of life. Get regular mental health checkups.
Working together, we can reduce stigma
around mental health.